In other developments, the United States says one of its diplomats in India will leave the country at Delhi's request. The tit-for-tat move comes a day after Washington effectively expelled the Indian diplomat Devyani Khobragade after she was charged for visa fraud and underpaying her housekeeper. Ms. Khobragade's arrest and strip search in December prompted outrage in India and dealt a serious blow to ties with the US. Well, reports say the expelled American diplomat, who's not been identified, is of a similar rank to Ms. Khobragade. The official is suspected of having helped the family of Ms. Khobragade's housekeeper travel to America, where they were granted protection by prosecutors. They were evacuated from India because of attempts to intimidate them.
Thank you. I said no comments right now. I just want to thank my nation for the support that they've given me. That's it. Thank you.
Ms. Khobragade arrived back in New Delhi last night after Washington granted her diplomatic immunity, but she will not be allowed to return to the US unless she surrenders to the court. Well, that's because the charges remain in place and her immunity expired on returning to India. Our US correspondent Kate Fisher has more.
As her father and sister came to meet her at the airport, it was clear that although Devyani Khobragade may be back in India, the repercussions from her arrest are far from over. But today, the US State Department played down the situation.
We deeply regret that the Indian government felt it was necessary to expel one of our diplomatic personnel. This has clearly been a challenging time in the US-India relationship. We expect and hope that this will now come to closure, and the Indians will now take significant steps with us to improve our relationship and return it to a more constructive place.
But it's clear that for many Indians there is still no closure on this episode, and that the US could be being short-sighted if it believes that the matter has been resolved.
Certainly, this affair has really scarred the bilateral relationship. And I think that the United States doesn't necessarily realize how much it's affected the Indians. I mean, the U.S., I think, sees this as something that's been resolved, that Khobragade was given immunity and she was allowed to leave the country. But in fact, India sees it very differently. It still is waiting for an apology, which it probably will not get. And, you know, that type of, there's sort of a mismatch in expectations coming out of this whole affair.
I also want to thank Chairman
Already cracks in the relationship have appeared. The US Energy Secretary Ernest Moniz has postponed a planned trip to India next week. It sparked questions about what it means for India's progress on reducing the country's carbon emissions.
Well, I think it's a cause of concern because this is an important relationship between the two countries, and they have a lot of work that they need to be doing together on climate change. But I think this is a delay and not more than that. These talks don't rely on a single meeting of this kind, and I think that this is really just a delay and not anything more permanent. So I'd like to think that those negotiations are fully underway and that collaboration will continue.
But as Ms. Khobragade returns to her homeland with an indictment from a US court hanging over her, and an American diplomat is sent back here, collaboration between the world's two largest democracies seems a long way off. Kate Fisher, Channel NewsAsia, Washington.